Ivan had cared for his paralyzed daughter, Flavia, with unwavering dedication for 25 long years. One day, however, something unusual caught his attention, prompting him to install cameras throughout their home. What he uncovered would send chills down his spine. It was a quiet morning when Ivan woke abruptly to the sound of his alarm. Sitting up, he felt his bones creak, a stark reminder that he was now 65 years old. Despite the toll the years had taken on him, Ivan never let age slow him down. After freshening up, he made his way to the room next door, where his daughter, Flavia, lay asleep. Flavia, now 35, had been unable to move her legs ever since a devastating car accident when she was just 10 years old. From that moment, Ivan had cared for her with an immense amount of love and tenderness. Gently, Ivan called out to wake Flavia, softly shaking her shoulder. She mumbled and slowly opened her eyes, a childlike expression still evident on her face, as if she were that same 10-year-old girl. Ivan helped her sit in her wheelchair, carefully lifting her frail body from the bed, and wheeled her into the bathroom. After assisting her with her morning routine, he brought her to the kitchen, where they had breakfast together, a ritual they had shared every day. Over the years, Ivan had developed a meticulous routine, mastering how to move Flavia without causing her pain and feeding her slowly with a spoon, ensuring each bite was gentle. But as they sat there eating, Ivan noticed something strange, a faint glimmer in Flavia's eyes, as though she was trying to smile. Then, under the table, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. Flavia's toes twitched. It was barely noticeable, but Ivan was certain of what he saw. It had been so long since her feet had moved that it shocked him to the core. After breakfast, Ivan took Flavia outside to soak in the morning sun, just like they did every day. They enjoyed walking through the garden, taking in the fresh air, but Ivan couldn't stop glancing at Flavia, watching for more signs of movement. Sure enough, her fingers twitched ever so slightly, and there was a subtle shift in how she was sitting. That night, after putting her to bed, Ivan lay awake, thoughts racing. Could it be possible that Flavia wasn't truly paralyzed? Had she been hiding this from him all these years? The thought seemed ridiculous, but now it gnawed at him. Ivan had always been a man of routine, rising early every morning despite the aches and pains that came with his age. But these physical pains were nothing compared to the emotional weight he carried. Ivan lived alone with Flavia after a tragic car accident had taken the lives of his wife and their other daughter. Ever since, he had poured his heart and soul into taking care of Flavia, who had been gravely injured in the crash and left unable to move her legs. The doctors had run numerous tests and told Ivan that Flavia would never walk again. He had believed them, without question. But now, something deep within him whispered that something was off. The next morning felt like any other, yet Ivan couldn't shake the growing suspicion. He went into Flavia's room to start their day, but this day would be different. Ivan knew his daughter inside and out. He could read every look and gesture she made. So, when he saw that same gleam in her eyes and the tiny movement of her toes again, he knew something important was happening. Feeling the cold ceramic floor beneath his feet, Ivan made his way to the bathroom to complete his morning hygiene routine. Each step was slow and deliberate, as his body bore the burden of the years. Afterward, he entered Flavia's room, greeted her with a cheerful, "Good morning," and opened the curtains to let the sunlight stream in. Flavia groaned, shielding her eyes from the bright light, her hair disheveled, and the room filled with the smell of soiled bedsheets. With a sigh, Ivan placed her in her wheelchair and took her to the bathroom. He carefully undressed her, his eyes averting from the scars that marked her body, and helped her into the shower. The warm water made Flavia moan softly, to which Ivan reassured her, "It's okay, we're almost done." After drying her off, he combed her hair with the tender care that had come from years of practice. Flavia stared blankly ahead, muttering words Ivan couldn't understand. He dressed her and wheeled her back to the kitchen, where he fed her breakfast as usual, wiping her mouth when necessary. Though it was a routine filled with love, the doubts Ivan felt were growing. Later, after settling Flavia in front of the TV, Ivan went to his bedroom and pulled out some old boxes. Inside were photos, newspaper clippings, and articles about the car accident that had shattered their family 25 years ago. He hoped to find something, anything, that would either confirm or dispel his nagging suspicions. Looking at the pictures of his late wife and daughter filled him with overwhelming grief. Among the memories, he found a yellowed newspaper clipping about the accident. A car colliding with a truck, his wife behind the wheel, and Flavia in the back seat. The sole survivor, paralyzed. Revisiting those agonizing moments in the hospital and seeing Flavia's tears in his mind's eye, Ivan questioned why he was suddenly filled with doubt after all these years. Was it simply exhaustion? He packed everything away and went to have lunch with Flavia, feeding her as he always did. Afterward, he put her to bed for her afternoon rest and lay down for a nap himself, his head throbbing with the weight of his thoughts. When Ivan woke in the late afternoon, he made his way to Flavia's room, only to be greeted with a terrifying sight. Flavia wasn't there. Her wheelchair was gone too. Panic gripped him as he ran through the house, calling her name until he found her outside, sitting in the garden, staring at the plants. "Flavia, what are you doing out here?" Ivan asked, his voice thick with fear. Flavia, startled by the question, looked at him with confusion and tried to speak, but her words were incoherent. What struck Ivan most was that Flavia didn't seem at all alarmed by her presence outside the bed. After calming down, Ivan wheeled her back inside without a word, placing her in front of the TV where she remained for the rest of the day. That night, Ivan lay awake, his mind racing with the events of the day, unable to shake the unsettling feeling creeping into his heart. Perhaps Flavia had been startled when Ivan found her outside. Could it be possible that Flavia had been pretending to be paralyzed all this time? Ivan couldn't shake the doubt from his mind. The next morning, he decided to take action. He left Flavia in the care of the nurse, who occasionally helped them during the week, and went out to run errands. While at the store, he purchased small hidden cameras that he could discreetly place around the house to monitor Flavia when he wasn't nearby. Ivan felt a wave of guilt wash over him for suspecting his own daughter, but he needed to know the truth. That night, after Flavia had fallen asleep, he carefully installed the hidden cameras, positioning them in key areas of the house and connecting them to a tablet in his room. This way, he could observe everything without Flavia noticing. Filled with a mix of anxiety and dread, Ivan went to bed, eagerly awaiting what the next morning would reveal. When the dawn broke, Ivan hurriedly checked the tablet. He scrolled through the footage from the night before, but saw nothing unusual. Flavia remained motionless in bed, just as she had every other night. Relieved, Ivan began to think that perhaps he was just being paranoid. After breakfast, he went to wake Flavia, who was lying in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. "Good morning, Flavia. Time to get up," Ivan said as he opened the curtains, allowing sunlight to flood the room. Flavia blinked at the sudden brightness and murmured some incoherent words. Ivan helped her into her wheelchair and wheeled her to the bathroom for her morning wash. As he bathed and dressed her, everything seemed just as it had always been. Flavia was passive and distant, showing no signs of anything unusual. After breakfast, Ivan settled Flavia in front of the TV, just like any other day. But before long, curiosity got the better of him. He returned to his room and checked the tablet again, feeling a bit foolish for doubting his daughter. What he saw next, however, would shake him to his core. As soon as Ivan left the room, the cameras captured something unbelievable. Flavia stopped her incoherent murmuring, her expression shifting from distant to one of startling clarity. With visible effort, she stood up from her wheelchair, walked to the bathroom, and examined her reflection in the mirror, running her hands through her hair as if assessing herself. She then returned to her wheelchair, resuming her usual vacant expression, just in time for Ivan's return. Ivan sat frozen in disbelief. His worst suspicions were true. Flavia had been deceiving him all along. But why? How long had this been going on? Had she faked her paralysis from the very beginning, or had it started later? Ivan's mind raced with confusion, anger, and sadness. He thought about lighting a cigarette to calm his nerves, even though he had quit smoking years ago. He needed more evidence before confronting her directly. The rest of the day passed in a blur as Ivan continued to secretly monitor the footage. What he saw was both shocking and heartbreaking. Flavia was not only able to stand, she could walk. He watched her stretch her legs, stand by the refrigerator, and even use the furniture for support as she moved around the house. How could he have spent 25 years caring for her, believing she couldn't walk, when in reality she could? He felt betrayed and deceived, wondering if she had been mocking him all this time. That night, after putting Flavia to bed, Ivan lay awake, overwhelmed by thoughts of what to do next. Part of him wanted to confront her immediately, to demand an explanation for her deceit. But the rational side of his mind told him to be cautious, to gather more evidence before any confrontation. He even considered consulting a lawyer. As the morning light filtered into the room, Ivan's anger had faded, replaced by a deep sadness. He couldn't understand how things had come to this. How had his sweet little girl, once full of life and laughter, turned into someone capable of maintaining such a monumental lie for so long? He remembered Flavia as a cheerful, energetic child. What had caused her to change so drastically, to the point where she would fake her paralysis? Ivan decided to change his approach. Rather than digging for more lies, he resolved to try and understand what had led Flavia to pretend for so many years. That day, he treated her with extra care, speaking to her more gently and trying to look beyond the facade of helplessness. Over lunch, he tried to engage her in conversation, asking how she was feeling and if she needed anything. Flavia only mumbled nonsensical words, as usual, but Ivan thought he saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. After lunch, instead of leaving her in front of the television, Ivan took Flavia outside to bask in the sunlight. He spoke softly, reminiscing about her childhood, about the games they used to play and her infectious laughter. He mentioned her mother, reminding Flavia how much they both loved her. Flavia remained silent, but a single tear slid down her cheek. That night, as Ivan gently tucked Flavia into bed, he covered her with a soft blanket and turned off the light. Though the tablet remained connected to the cameras, Ivan no longer felt compelled to watch the footage. What he truly wanted was to reconnect with his daughter. In the following days, Ivan spent more time with Flavia, taking her to the park, reading her childhood stories, and showing her old family photos. He noticed a change in her. She seemed more present, more aware of her surroundings. One afternoon, as they were looking through a photo album together, Flavia touched a picture of the two of them and murmured, "Mama, Papa." Ivan was overwhelmed with emotion. It was the first time in years that she had said something coherent. With tears in his eyes, he hugged her tightly and whispered, "I love you." In that moment, Ivan realized that the most important thing was not exposing the lie, but rebuilding their relationship. In time, he was confident that Flavia would open up and tell him the truth about her paralysis, but that could wait. For now, what mattered most was simply enjoying her company. As the weeks passed, the bond between Ivan and Flavia slowly grew stronger. She became more communicative and expressive, even starting to speak a few more words. Ivan eventually stopped checking the hidden camera footage, feeling that spying on his daughter was wrong. Instead, he focused on rebuilding the trust between them. One bright spring morning, after breakfast, Ivan took Flavia outside to enjoy the sunshine. The sky was clear, and the birds sang sweetly in the trees. "What a beautiful day, isn't it, my dear?" Ivan said. Flavia opened her eyes and murmured something Ivan couldn't quite understand, but he knew her recovery would take time. Patience was key. As they made their way back inside, passing by a mirror, Flavia caught sight of her reflection and seemed more attentive. "You look wonderful, Flavia," Ivan said, trying to lift her spirits. He teased her about her unruly hair, just like when she was a little girl. Flavia glanced at him and gave a small, shy smile, something that hadn't happened in years. Ivan was deeply moved. After lunch, as Ivan was taking Flavia to her room to rest, she gently grabbed his arm and in a soft, weak voice whispered, "Papa." Ivan was overwhelmed with emotion, for it had been years since she had called him that. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked. Flavia pointed toward the window, indicating that she wanted to go back to the garden. Ivan wheeled her outside, near the rose bushes, where they could sit together, cherishing the moment. Ivan was hanging up the laundry when, suddenly, a sound from the yard caught his attention. Fearing the worst, he rushed outside, dreading that Flavia might have fallen. But what he saw left him utterly shocked. Flavia was standing, supported by the wall, with her wheelchair tipped over beside her. It looked like she had tried to walk and stumbled. Upon seeing Ivan, Flavia's face went pale with fear. "Flavia, you can walk?" Ivan asked, his voice thick with disbelief. Flavia didn't respond. Her legs trembled under the strain of standing, and before she could answer, she collapsed to the ground. Ivan quickly ran to her side, helping her sit down, his heart pounding in his chest. Flavia refused to meet his gaze, her lip quivering with emotion. "Don't worry," Ivan said, his voice soft and reassuring. "I'm not angry, but I need you to explain what's going on." Flavia shook her head, still avoiding his eyes. "Please, Flavia," Ivan continued gently. "I know you've been hiding the truth from me about your paralysis all these years. I just need to understand why." At this, Flavia's resolve broke. She began to cry, her sobs quiet but filled with years of pent-up guilt. Ivan wrapped his arms around her, comforting her as he had done when she was younger, holding her close until her tears subsided. Once she had calmed down, Flavia, through trembling words, apologized and started to share her story. She explained that after the tragic car accident that had killed her mother, she had woken up in the hospital unable to move. The doctors had told her that there was a chance she might improve, but as the months dragged on with no progress, Flavia sank into depression, feeling trapped in her immobility. She hated the pity she saw in the eyes of other children and resented her own limitations. One day, she discovered that she could move her toes, and in secret, she began to train her legs, slowly building enough strength to stand and even take a few shaky steps. However, by that point, her identity as a paraplegic had become ingrained in her life. Being paralyzed gave her attention and allowed her to avoid school and social situations. Even after being discharged from the hospital, Flavia continued to fake her disability. What began as a temporary deception had gradually turned into a permanent lie. She had long wanted to tell Ivan the truth, but was terrified of his reaction and the consequences. Ivan listened, his heart aching with every word. When she finished, he took a deep breath, still stunned by the weight of the revelation. "You should have told me sooner, Flavia," he said gently. "But what matters now is that I know the truth, and I'm here to help you." Flavia, overwhelmed with relief, hugged her father tightly. Tears of gratitude streamed down her face as Ivan comforted her, promising they would face this situation together. Later that evening, after dinner, they spoke at length. Ivan reassured Flavia of his love, letting her know that there were no hard feelings, only a desire to move forward. Flavia opened up further, sharing more about her fears and frustrations from all those years. Ivan promised to schedule an appointment with both a psychologist and a physical therapist to help Flavia rebuild her strength, physically and emotionally. The next morning, Ivan booked an appointment with Dr. Alice, a well-known psychologist, and arranged for physical therapy sessions 3 times a week with a specialist in rehabilitation. When Ivan informed Flavia about the appointments, she appeared nervous but ultimately agreed to go. After breakfast, Ivan and Flavia had a heart-to-heart conversation. Ivan acknowledged her fear of such a significant change, but emphasized that it was crucial for her to be strong and committed to overcoming the lies and limitations she had imposed on herself. Telling the truth was the hardest part. Ivan comforted her. "Now, I'm here to support you through the rest. You're not alone." Flavia, emotional and filled with a newfound determination, thanked her father. "I want to try," she said with resolve. "I can't stand living this lie anymore." It was a pivotal moment for Flavia, as she faced the world without pretending for the first time in years. Her hands trembled with a mixture of anxiety and excitement as Ivan helped her into the car, reassuring her that Dr. Angela was a very compassionate and understanding therapist. As they drove, Flavia gazed out the window, seeing the world with fresh eyes, as if everything was new and full of possibilities. When they arrived at the appointment, they were greeted warmly by Dr. Angela, who immediately made them feel at ease with her kind and welcoming demeanor. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Flavia," Dr. Angela said softly. This is a safe place where you can feel comfortable to talk about anything." Flavia, still shy and uncertain, took a seat. Dr. Angela's warm smile slowly put her at ease. She explained that this was a judgment-free space, where Flavia could express her thoughts and feelings without fear. "Here, we can discuss anything you're feeling at your own pace. Does that sound okay?" Feeling a bit more comfortable, Flavia nodded. Over the course of the nearly 2-hour session, Flavia began to open up, revealing the shame, fear, and insecurity that had driven her to fake her disability. She spoke about the burden of living a lie and how it had become a trap she didn't know how to escape. Dr. Angela listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and emphasizing the importance of not being too hard on herself. Now was the time to heal and rediscover who she truly was. Ivan also participated in the session, receiving guidance on how to support Flavia without overwhelming her. He promised to be there for her every step of the way, offering unconditional love and support. At the end of the session, Dr. Angela praised them for their courage in being open and vulnerable, and they scheduled weekly appointments moving forward. As they left the appointment, Flavia felt a sense of renewal. "It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be," she admitted to Ivan on the drive home. "I'm proud of you," Ivan said, glancing at her with a smile. "This is just the beginning, and you've already taken the hardest step." Later that afternoon, they went to Flavia's first physical therapy session with Marcelo, a strong, energetic therapist with a friendly demeanor. His clinic was filled with various equipment designed to help exercise and strengthen every part of the body. Marcelo conducted a thorough evaluation, noting the muscle atrophy in Flavia's legs due to years of disuse, but reassured them that it was nothing that couldn't be improved with consistent training. They began with light stretching and strengthening exercises. Flavia tired quickly, but Marcelo was patient, guiding her gently and showing her exercises to practice at home. Ivan watched proudly as Flavia pushed through, determined to regain her mobility. Marcelo recommended increasing her protein intake to aid in muscle development. By the end of the session, Flavia was exhausted but motivated. On the way home, she excitedly told Ivan about the exercises and how Marcelo believed that, in time, she would be able to stand without trembling and even begin walking again. Ivan beamed with joy, thrilled to see his daughter so driven and hopeful for the future. That evening, Flavia went to bed early, worn out from the day's events. Ivan called Senora Rosalia, the nurse who had helped them in the past, to let her know that her services were no longer needed. She was surprised by the news, but accepted the decision graciously. For Ivan, this marked the beginning of Flavia's independence, a significant step toward leaving the past behind. In the days that followed, Flavia made noticeable progress. Flavia was making remarkable progress. She had managed to stand up and take a few steps on her own. Her psychologist also noticed improvements in her mood and self-esteem. However, the journey was not without its struggles. After a particularly challenging physical therapy session, Flavia returned home frustrated and locked herself in her room. The next day, Ivan, deeply worried, discovered that Flavia's room was empty. Panic set in as he searched the house and the surrounding area. When he couldn't find her, he called the police, who immediately started a search. That night was agonizing for Ivan, filled with fear and uncertainty. Fortunately, by morning, the police found Flavia near a park, disoriented but safe. When they reunited, Flavia broke down in tears, apologizing for running away. Ivan, with a heavy sigh of relief, hugged her tightly. "Don't worry, sweetheart," he whispered. "We'll get through this together." Ivan realized that Flavia needed more than just physical recovery. She needed to build her confidence and autonomy. He began taking her to public places, helping her adjust to being outside again and manage her anxiety in social settings. Slowly but surely, Flavia started feeling more comfortable around others and learned to handle her emotions better. Dr. Angela, her psychologist, reminded her that setbacks were a natural part of recovery and reassured her of unwavering support, which gave Flavia much-needed confidence. Gradually, Flavia adapted to her new reality. Ivan even bought her a smaller wheelchair to make their outdoor strolls easier, which greatly contributed to her recovery. Marcelo, her physical therapist, introduced new exercises, including weights and resistance bands. The results were impressive. Flavia could now stand and walk with a walker. Seeing her progress, Marcelo suggested that she try walking without assistance. Ivan, filled with pride and emotion, shared this idea with Flavia. Though nervous, she agreed to the challenge. In the spacious living room, Ivan held Flavia's hands, encouraging her with every step. Flavia, taking a deep breath, slowly took her first steps with her father's help. With each passing moment, her confidence grew. Eventually, she let go of Ivan's hands and, for the first time, walked across the room on her own. It was a moment filled with tears of joy and overwhelming emotion. They embraced, celebrating this significant milestone. Over time, Flavia became more independent. She began walking around the house and the garden without any assistance, although Ivan still accompanied her to therapy sessions. But one afternoon, as they sat together drinking tea, Flavia surprised Ivan with a bold statement. She wanted to live on her own. Ivan was taken aback by her sudden declaration. "You're still recovering, and you need support," he argued gently, but Flavia was resolute. "I need to try to live for myself now that I can. I don't want to rely on you forever." Flavia was determined to gain autonomy, no longer wanting to see herself as a burden. She was ready to embrace a new chapter in her life. Ivan took her hand in his eyes filled with paternal love and admiration. "Flavia, you have never been, and you will never be, a burden to me. I'm here to support you for as long as you need. But if you feel ready to follow your own path, know that you have my full support. I'm incredibly proud of you." His voice cracked with emotion, and they shared a heartfelt embrace. An embrace filled with unconditional love and support. Though Ivan felt immense pride in Flavia's determination, he also couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness at the thought of her leaving. After years of shared struggles and triumphs, the idea of not having her by his side in their day-to-day life weighed heavily on his heart. Yet, he understood that allowing Flavia to walk her own path was essential for her growth and fulfillment. As the years passed, Flavia blossomed into a strong, independent woman. Ivan often referred to her as a free bird, and that's exactly what she had become. Flavia eventually met someone special, got engaged, and was building a life full of love and independence. One quiet evening, Ivan had a vivid dream of his late wife. In the dream, she embraced him warmly, smiling with that familiar look of gratitude and love that he remembered so well. She thanked him for everything he had done, expressing her pride in Ivan for being such a devoted father. The dream left Ivan with a profound sense of peace and closure. It was as if, somehow, he had received the approval he had always sought, a sign that, despite all the challenges and doubts, he had chosen the right path in raising Flavia with unwavering love and dedication. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts about it in the comments below.